The dim glow of the oscilloscope cast a sickly green light across Elias's gaunt face, illuminating the worry lines etched deep by countless sleepless nights. His world had shrunk to the confines of this small, cluttered room, a sanctuary filled with the hum of electronics and the ghosts of memory. Every wire, every dial, every flickering LED was a testament to his solitary obsession, a relentless pursuit born from an unbearable loss. Sarah, his younger sister, had vanished years ago, leaving behind a void that no amount of time or grief could fill. He hunted for her not in the physical world, but in the ethereal whispers of the airwaves, convinced that somewhere, somehow, a piece of her essence might still resonate. Elias's routine was a ritual of sorrow and hope. As the city lights faded and the world outside succumbed to sleep, he would settle into his worn armchair, headphones clamped over his ears, a lone sentinel against the encroaching silence. Hour after hour, he would meticulously sweep across the electromagnetic spectrum, a silent prayer accompanying each turn of the frequency knob. His life had become a blur of static and white noise, punctuated only by the occasional distant broadcast or the crackle of atmospheric interference. Friends had drifted away, responsibilities had withered, all consumed by the gnawing emptiness that had taken root within him. His search was not merely a hobby. It was an act of desperate atonement, a brother's endless vigil. Then, it happened. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. At precisely 3:17 a.m., a distinct signal broke through the monotonous hiss. It was faint, almost melodic, a rhythmic pulse unlike any he had ever encountered. It wasn't the sharp, artificial tone of a shortwave radio, nor the chaotic burst of a distant storm. This was something else entirely, an ethereal hum that seemed to resonate deep within his bones. Elias, a man of science and logic, initially dismissed it as an anomaly, a fluke of atmospheric conditions or equipment malfunction. He meticulously checked his setup, recalibrated his antenna, and even reset his entire system. Yet the signal persisted, a fleeting, ghost-like presence that vanished as abruptly as it appeared, leaving only the familiar static in its wake. His initial disbelief slowly gave way to a growing, unsettling fascination. The next night he was ready, fingers hovering over the dials, heart thumping with a mixture of dread and anticipation. And precisely at 3:17 a.m., there it was again. The same faint, almost melodic static, a signature that was now unmistakable. This wasn't random. It was deliberate. An obsession took root, quickly eclipsing his previous undirected searches. Elias began documenting its patterns with a feverish intensity, meticulously recording every detail, its precise timing, its subtle modulations, the exact frequency it occupied. Sleep became a luxury he could no longer afford, food an afterthought. The world outside his lab receded further, replaced by the hypnotic rhythm of the signal. As days bled into weeks, a subtle, almost imperceptible pattern began to emerge within the static. It wasn't a clear message, but a recurring motif, a complex arrangement of frequencies that hinted at something more than mere noise. It was like deciphering a musical score written in a language he didn't yet understand, but whose underlying structure promised meaning. This burgeoning pattern, abstract and elusive, began to trigger fragmented memories of Sarah. Her laughter, her favorite lullaby, the way she used to hum softly while drawing. All these echoes from the past intertwined with the enigmatic signal, intensifying his emotional connection to the unfolding mystery. He felt a desperate urgency, a growing conviction that this signal, whatever its origin, was intimately tied to his lost sister. Then, one night, as the signal pulsed with its usual eerie precision, a subtle shift occurred. A brief, distorted sound, almost like a vocalization, seemed to break through the static. It was fleeting, barely there, but unmistakable. A word, or perhaps part of one, that he couldn't quite make out, yet it sent a shiver down his spine. It felt familiar, profoundly, terrifyingly familiar. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The distorted fragment, that almost word, ignited a new, furious dedication within Elias. He no longer merely listened, he sought to dismantle the signal, to peer into its very essence. His meager equipment, once sufficient for a hobbyist, now seemed woefully inadequate. He plunged his savings into high-grade components, meticulously upgrading his receivers, amplifiers, and spectrum analyzers. His lab transformed further, a veritable temple to the enigmatic hum, filled with the scent of solder and the soft glow of monitors. Sleep became a forgotten luxury, meals a perfunctory act performed while staring blankly at waveform patterns. His physical well-being deteriorated, his skin growing paler, his eyes perpetually bloodshot, but his resolve, paradoxically, strengthened with each passing, sleepless night. Through arduous calculations and cross-referencing, Elias began to map the signal's trajectory. What he discovered sent a cold dread through him. The source, according to his increasingly precise triangulations, originated from an impossible distance, far beyond any known terrestrial broadcast, defying the conventional physics of radio wave propagation. It wasn't bouncing off the ionosphere, nor was it a rogue satellite. It seemed to emanate from somewhere truly alien, a location that should have been utterly silent, a void. This revelation, rather than deterring him, only fueled his obsession, lending a cosmic weight to his deeply personal quest. In a desperate attempt to validate his findings, Elias reached out to Dr. Eris Thorne, his former mentor. Thorne, a man whose brilliance was matched only by his controversial theories and towering ego, listened with an air of detached amusement. He dismissed Elias's meticulously gathered data as either a delusion born of grief or an elaborate trick of the mind, perhaps even a sophisticated prank. "Elias," Thorne had scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension, "grief can play powerful tricks. You're chasing phantoms in the static, boy. Focus on verifiable science, not emotional projections." The rejection stung, but Elias, driven by an unshakable inner conviction, merely redoubled his efforts. One evening, while sifting through a dusty box of Sarah's childhood mementos, a small, worn wooden bird caught his eye. It was a carving she had cherished, and on its base, barely visible, was a cryptic symbol, a series of interlocking lines and curves. A jolt went through Elias. He had seen this pattern before, not with his eyes, but with his mind's eye, emerging from the complex algorithms he was using to visualize the signal's underlying structure. The symbol on the bird resonated with an abstract pattern he had been painstakingly extracting from the seemingly random noise of the 3:17 a.m. transmission. It was too precise to be coincidence, too specific to be a figment of his imagination. This discovery solidified his growing belief. The signal was not merely interference. It was a form of communication, perhaps even a message, intricately woven into the fabric of the static. The implications were staggering. If Sarah had known this symbol, if it was connected to the signal, then her disappearance might be linked to this otherworldly phenomenon. During his late-night sessions, a new sensation began to creep upon Elias. The distinct, unsettling feeling of being watched, of being listened to. The air in his lab felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence, as if the signal itself had developed an awareness, a consciousness that extended beyond the mere transmission of waves. Then came the breakthrough. After weeks of tireless experimentation, Elias isolated a sequence of tones, a distinct melodic phrase embedded within the chaotic static. He played it forward. It was unintelligible. He played it backward, and his blood ran cold. Through the hiss and crackle, distorted but undeniably present, was a fragment of a lullaby. Not just any lullaby, but the very one Sarah used to sing to her dolls, the one their mother had sung to them both. "Sleep, my sweet, the stars are bright." The words were faint, fragmented, but unmistakable. This discovery shattered his remaining scientific detachment. His quest was no longer about proving an anomaly. It was about finding his sister. The signal, once an intellectual puzzle, had become a direct, agonizing link to his lost past, transforming his relentless pursuit into a deeply personal, desperate mission. One night as he listened, transfixed by the spectral lullaby, the signal abruptly cut out. The silence that followed was deafening, suffocating, and then, in that profound absence, a sound emerged, a chilling, almost human sigh, soft and mournful, yet filled with an inexplicable longing. It lasted only a second before the static returned, and with it, the lullaby, now imbued with a renewed, terrifying intensity. The sigh echoed in his mind, a haunting prelude to an even deeper mystery. Elias, now propelled by a potent cocktail of grief and revelation, delved deeper into the labyrinth of his family's past. His relentless pursuit of the signal's origins led him to a hidden corner of his father's study, a room Elias had long avoided, thick with the dust of forgotten memories. There, behind a false panel in a musty old bookshelf, he discovered a treasure trove, his father's meticulously organized research, a parallel universe of obsession. It became chillingly clear that Elias was not the first in his family to be drawn into the enigmatic allure of unexplained signals. His father, years before his sudden, unexplained disappearance, had been on a similar quest. The archive contained notebooks filled with dense scientific notations, intricate diagrams of homemade antennae, and, most disturbingly, a personal journal. As Elias turned the brittle pages, his father's elegant script began to unravel a story of growing paranoia. His father wrote of an unseen influence, a pervasive, almost sentient force connected to the very frequencies Elias was now exploring. He detailed strange occurrences, subtle manipulations of his environment, and the disquieting sensation of being observed. Elias felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. His father's words resonated with his own recent experiences, painting a picture of a shared, terrifying legacy. Meanwhile, Dr. Eris Thorne, initially dismissive, began to exhibit a peculiar change in demeanor. His casual inquiries about Elias's progress grew more frequent, his questions increasingly pointed. There was a new, unsettling glint in his eyes, a hunger that Elias hadn't noticed before. Thorne, under the guise of mentorship, subtly attempted to gain access to Elias's raw data, his algorithms, his precious recordings of the 3:17 a.m. signal. Elias, now acutely aware of his father's warnings, instinctively recoiled, protecting his findings with a fierce, newfound vigilance. He sensed a shift in Thorne, a predatory curiosity that belied his earlier condescension. Sleep, when it finally came, offered no respite. Elias was plagued by increasingly vivid and disturbing dreams. The constant hum of the radio signal permeated his subconscious, weaving through distorted images of Sarah. Her voice, once a distant echo, now whispered directly into his mind, sometimes pleading, sometimes beckoning, always intertwined with the rhythmic pulse of the static. He would wake in a cold sweat, the phantom sound of her voice lingering, blurring the lines between reality and the spectral world the signal seemed to inhabit. One particularly restless morning, driven by a growing premonition, Elias returned to his father's dusty radio, the antique console that had first sparked his own fascination. He ran his fingers over its worn wooden casing, a sudden intuition guiding him. Prying open a loose panel near the tuning knob, he discovered a hidden compartment. Inside lay a single, yellowed piece of paper. The note, written in his father's frantic hand, contained a cryptic warning. "The gateway is real. Do not listen too closely. It draws you in." The words sent a jolt of terror through Elias, confirming his darkest suspicions. As days turned into nights, the signal's influence began to subtly manipulate Elias's immediate environment. Lights in his lab would flicker erratically, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Objects would shift inexplicably, a pen rolling off his desk, a book falling from a shelf, as if an unseen hand were playfully or perhaps menacingly toying with his reality. The air grew heavy, charged with an unsettling, almost electric tension, transforming his sanctuary into a stage for the signal's growing presence. Then came the night of the break-in. A sudden crash from the ground floor jolted Elias awake. He heard hurried footsteps, the creak of floorboards. Someone was attempting to force their way into his lab, clearly after his research. Adrenaline surged through him. He had anticipated this, preparing rudimentary booby traps and reinforced locks. The intruder, thwarted by a complex series of alarms and barricades, eventually retreated into the night, leaving behind only the chilling certainty that his work had attracted unwelcome attention. Elias now understood that the signal wasn't merely transmitting information, it was an active entity, seeking to draw him in, to establish a deeper, terrifying connection. The lullaby fragment, the one Sarah used to sing, became clearer, more distinct in the nightly transmissions. More words emerged from the static, piecing together a coherent message. But the clarity brought not comfort, but a terrifying twist. It wasn't the sweet, innocent lullaby he remembered. Instead, Sarah's voice, imbued with an ethereal sorrow, was pleading for help, her words echoing from somewhere impossibly distant, a place beyond reach, beyond comprehension. "Help me, Elias. I'm lost. I'm so far away." The signal had become a cry for rescue. The chilling plea from Sarah, amplified and sharpened by Elias's increasingly sophisticated equipment, propelled him into a desperate confrontation. He found Dr. Eris Thorne in his sterile, brightly lit lab, surrounded by humming machinery and glowing monitors. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Elias, his voice laced with a fury he rarely displayed, laid bare his findings, his father's journal, the hidden note, and most damningly, the distorted lullaby. Thorne, initially maintaining his facade of detached scientific curiosity, finally buckled under the weight of Elias's accusations, a flicker of something dark crossing his features. He admitted to having a past connection to Elias's father, a partnership that had soured into rivalry. He spoke of a secret project, one involving experimental signal transmission, not for communication, but for manipulation. Thorne, his voice now devoid of its usual academic pretense, revealed a chilling truth. Elias's father had not simply disappeared. He had believed in a dimensional rift, a tear in the fabric of reality, and had been desperately trying to communicate through it. But his attempts to cross, to truly breach the veil, had resulted in his vanishing, leaving behind only fragmented data and a legacy of warning. Elias listened, a cold dread seeping into his bones. He had always suspected Thorne was involved in his father's disappearance, but now the pieces clicked into place, painting a grim picture of ambition, betrayal, and a warped scientific curiosity that knew no ethical bounds. Sarah's fate, he realized with a sickening lurch, might be inextricably linked to Thorne's monstrous experiments. As if responding to the revelation, the signal at 3:17 a.m. that night was more potent, more terrifying than ever before. Sarah's voice, now unnervingly distinct, cut through the static, her words filled with an abject fear that twisted Elias's gut. She described a desolate alien landscape, a place of shifting shadows and impossible colors, where time itself seemed fractured. "It's cold here. Elias," her voice wavered, "and I'm not alone. They watch." The implication was horrifying. Sarah was not just lost. She was trapped, observed, perhaps even held captive in this impossible realm. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Elias infiltrated Thorne's private research facility. There, hidden amongst reams of innocuous scientific reports, he found the true extent of Thorne's depravity. His private notes detailed not only his obsession with controlling interdimensional gateways, but also a series of unethical experiments, human and otherwise, all aimed at stabilizing the rift. Thorne wasn't just observing, he was actively trying to harness the gateway, to bend its power to his will. Elias realized with a jolt of terror that the signal wasn't coming from Sarah directly, but from a device or entity mimicking her voice, a cruel, elaborate lure designed to draw him closer. Thorne had been using Sarah's emotional resonance as a key, a beacon to unlock the gateway. Elias's increasingly erratic behavior and his undeniable progress had not gone unnoticed. A shadowy organization, the true power funding Thorne's monstrous endeavors, became aware of Elias's deep dive into their secrets. They began to actively monitor him, their unseen presence a growing pressure. Elias could feel their eyes on him, a chilling awareness that he was now a target. It was during this period of heightened paranoia that he found it. A hidden message from his father, subtly embedded within the signal's static, a digital ghost whispering from beyond the rift. The message was fragmented, distorted, but its core was clear, a desperate warning about Thorn's true intentions and a plea to stop him before he unleashed something catastrophic. The signal's intensity then peaked, not just a sound, but a physical force. It caused a throbbing pain behind Elias's eyes, a disorienting nausea that twisted his stomach. The air in his lab grew heavy, almost viscous, making it difficult to breathe. He felt a strange, irresistible pull, a sensation as if something immense and unseen was trying to reach across the vastness between dimensions, trying to pull him through the very fabric of reality. The gateway, he knew, was not just opening. It was actively reaching for him. Elias, now a man forged in the crucible of grief and scientific horror, stood at the precipice of a confrontation he knew could cost him everything. Armed with his father's hidden research, the fragmented warnings, and Sarah's haunting, increasingly desperate messages, he prepared to face Dr. Thorne. The deciphered notes from his father's final days were a grim map, revealing the precise coordinates of a hidden interdimensional gateway. Thorne, in his twisted ambition, was not just studying the 3:17 a.m. signal. He was actively using it as a key, a frequency to unlock the very fabric of reality at this obscure, abandoned facility. The shadowy organization, their patience worn thin by Elias's relentless pursuit of the truth, made their move. Operatives, faceless and efficient, closed in, their intentions clear: seize his research, silence him, and ensure the Gateway project proceeded without interference. Elias, however, had anticipated their aggression. His home, once a sanctuary, had become a fortress of paranoia and ingenuity. A tense, adrenaline-fueled chase ensued through the labyrinthine streets of the city. He dodged surveillance, outmaneuvered pursuit vehicles, his mind racing, driven by a singular, desperate need to save Sarah and expose Thorne's monstrous experiments to the world. Each turn of the wheel, each hurried breath, was a testament to his unbreakable resolve. He arrived at the Gateway's location, a discreet, derelict facility on the outskirts of the city, just as the first tremors of activation began. The air thrummed with an unnatural energy, a low, resonant hum that vibrated through his bones. Inside, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Thorne, his face alight with a manic fervor, stood before a colossal, shimmering archway of unknown metallic composition. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting an array of advanced alien-looking machinery to the central structure. Monitors flickered with chaotic energy readings, and the air crackled with ozone. The 3:17 a.m. signal, no longer a faint whisper, blasted through the facility, amplified to an unbearable roar, distorting the very concept of sound. Reality itself shimmered and warped, the walls seeming to breathe, the floor undulating beneath his feet. "Thorne!" Elias's voice, though strained, cut through the din. Thorne turned, a chilling smile playing on his lips, his eyes gleaming with a mad triumph. "Elias, you actually came. Predictable." He gestured towards the shimmering archway, an ethereal vortex of swirling light and shadow beginning to form within it. "She's quite the beacon, isn't she? Your sister. Such an exquisite emotional resonance. Perfect for stabilizing the interdimensional bridge." He confessed, his words dripping with a cold, scientific detachment, to using Sarah as bait, believing her deep emotional connection to Elias would somehow make the nascent Gateway more stable, her love a tether to this reality. A desperate struggle erupted between them amidst the chaotic energy of the opening gateway. Elias, fueled by a searing rage and an unyielding love for his sister, lunged at Thorne. The scientist, though physically slighter, fought back with a surprising ferocity, driven by his deranged ambition. They grappled, their bodies illuminated by the pulsating light of the gateway, the very fabric of space and time threatening to unravel around them. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the ground trembled violently. Then, through the deafening roar of the signal and the escalating chaos, Sarah's voice pierced through. It was clearer now, no longer a plea of fear, but a strange, beckoning hope. "Elias, come. It's beautiful." Her words, imbued with an otherworldly serenity, urged him to join her, pulling him towards the shimmering vortex, towards the unknown. Thorne, momentarily distracted by the sudden clarity of Sarah's voice, found himself pushed back, Elias's strength momentarily overwhelming. The gateway pulsed, beckoning, its embrace both terrifying and undeniably alluring. The gateway, now fully formed, pulsed with an otherworldly light, a breathtaking kaleidoscope of impossible colors swirling within its depths. It was a vision of cosmic grandeur and terrifying majesty, a window into a reality that defied every known law of physics, its impossible structures hinting at untold wonders and unimaginable dangers. Elias, momentarily stunned by its sheer spectacle, found himself standing at the precipice of an irreversible decision. He could try to sever the connection, to somehow close the gateway and forever consign Sarah to this unknown realm, or he could take the leap, venturing into the abyss, guided only by the lingering echo of her voice. Dr. Thorne, still reeling from Elias's desperate shove, stumbled backward, directly into the path of the gateway's raw, unstable energy. A blinding flash erupted, and a guttural cry was torn from his throat. The scientist, consumed by the very force he sought to control, dissolved into nothingness, his mad ambition finally extinguishing his existence. He vanished without a trace, a casualty of his own hubris, leaving behind only the acrid smell of ozone and the humming silence that followed his demise. Elias, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, took a deep breath. Sarah's voice, now a gentle, insistent whisper, seemed to emanate from the heart of the swirling portal, a siren song promising reunion and revelation. He closed his eyes for a fleeting second, picturing her face, recalling the warmth of her smile, and then, with a surge of unshakable resolve, he took a literal leap of faith. He stepped through the shimmering veil, surrendering himself to the gateway's embrace, the familiar world dissolving behind him in a cascade of light and sound. He found himself in a place of ethereal beauty and profound strangeness. The ground beneath his feet felt like solidified starlight, the air shimmered with unseen energies, and gravity seemed merely a suggestion. Towering structures, organic and crystalline, spiraled towards a sky painted in hues unknown to Earth. Time itself seemed to ripple, expanding and contracting, making moments feel like eternities, and eternities like fleeting breaths. It was a surreal, dreamlike landscape, a testament to the infinite possibilities of existence. Then he saw her, Sarah. She stood amidst a grove of luminous, swaying flora, her form subtly altered, imbued with a gentle luminescence. Her eyes, once filled with fear in the distorted signals, now held a profound serenity, a wisdom born of adaptation. She was not lost. She had merely transcended. A wave of relief so potent it brought him to his knees washed over Elias. He had found her. Sarah approached him, her movements fluid and graceful, a smile gracing her lips. She explained the true nature of the signal, her voice resonating with a quiet power. It was not a mere frequency, nor a lure concocted by Thorne. It was an ancient, benevolent entity, a living network that connected dimensions, a cosmic thread woven through the fabric of reality. Thorne, in his arrogance, had merely stumbled upon its periphery, attempting to harness its power for his own twisted ends, using Sarah's innate connection as a conduit, a powerful anchor to this reality. She had been drawn here, not trapped, but guided, her essence resonating with the entity, finding a strange peace and purpose in this new existence. The signal, she clarified, was not a distress call from a victim, but a beckoning from a soul who had found a new home, a subtle whisper of wonder from beyond the veil. Elias, gazing into his sister's eyes, saw not the terrified girl he remembered, but a being of light and understanding. The grief that had consumed him for so long finally began to recede, replaced by an overwhelming sense of awe and belonging. He understood now. This was not an escape, but an evolution. He chose to stay, to embrace this new existence with Sarah, to explore the boundless wonders of this dimension. His old life, his old self, felt impossibly distant, a fading memory. He had found redemption, not in saving Sarah from a prison, but in joining her in a liberation. The 3:17 a.m. signal, once a source of torment and mystery, now resonated with a different meaning. It was no longer a frantic search, but a steady beacon of connection, a silent testament to their journey, and a subtle, constant whisper of the vast unknown possibilities that lay beyond the familiar, echoing through the infinite reaches of existence. Their bond, once severed by tragedy, was now forged anew in the crucible of interdimensional travel, a testament to love's enduring power.